Hello and welcome to Graham's Film Club. So obviously this is a new format. We're just getting ready we're just starting this new format. So there might be a bit of green over here, which I couldn't get rid of, but don't worry about it. You know, in the great scheme of things, cares that the green screen ain't working properly. I need to move the lights around a bit, but you know, never mind. You can hear me. I hope that's a good thing. Big hello to David Huardo. We've got Charlie Nelson who's watching. We've got Glasgow Kiss saying hello everyone. Duke Vengeance saying don't watch films. It's government mind control, man. Well, you know, maybe a government from a long time ago. But we're talking about Alfred Hitchcock today. So yeah, don't worry about it too much. And obviously next week when I'm a bit more prepared, we'll probably go for Kubrick next week, I think. But yeah, we'll have the name coming up here. So we'll just say Graham's Film Club. That's just this week. We got similar. What's this? Something new? Yes, it is something new. So each week on Sunday evenings, if you care to join me at 8:00, we're gonna do a little bit of a deep dive into different directors and actors and producers over the years, and we're gonna have a chat about it. It's gonna be a two-way street, so please leave your comments in the comment leaving area here, which has just reset itself, which is very irritating. Don't do that. Comments. Obviously, if you want to leave a message now, it makes it look like I've got more friends. Please do. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about a particular director or a particular actor, and then we're going to watch one of their films, and we're going to do that on through the medium of Discord, and we're going to watch one of the films that has fallen out of copyright, so we won't be upsetting Warner Brothers or 20th Century Fox or Disney. Well, it's the same thing now anyway. But yeah, we won't be upsetting Universal or Canon Films. Which is good. I'm being very elegant. I've got red wine. I don't normally have wine. I thought, well, we're reviewing a film. I've got a nice red sort of Twin Peaks-esque curtain background. So let's go for it. So Lee Korn saying hi, hello, and also protocol. Hello, what's this? Who is Alfred Hitchcock? Alfred Hitchcock is one of the greatest directors to have ever lived. In his lifetime, he made 52 films. And all of which were incredibly good. Some of which were actual masterpieces, for my money. He was a master of suspense. His films were they always pushed what the technology could do at the time. He was into his experimental styles. We talk very much about art house cinemas and art house directors and mainstream directors, but he was someone who made mainstream films, was not afraid, and we'll come to this when we talk about Psycho in particular. He was not afraid to book the studio system and to try new things and to explore what you can do in a film. And a lot of the grammar that we have in films today comes from Hitchcock. It's quite a remarkable canon of movies that he managed to put out over several decades, starting in the 1920s, I think. I don't think he made any before 1920. Someone could correct me on that. Can we call you on stereo? No, Charlie, not today. I might try to get that set up in the future, but I still haven't set up my sound properly yet since I came back from the island. All my equipment, there's like a desktop over there. All my equipment is just splayed out all over it at the moment. But thank you very much for the £2 super chat. Really appreciate it. Al Pacino is number one. Well, Al Pacino was in that Adam Sandler film where Adam Sandler played two versions of himself, one a male version and one a female version. And Al Pacino fell in love with the female version of Adam Sandler. And that actually happened in an actual movie that was actually dreadful. So, yeah. That you either die a hero or live long enough to let your films become absolutely atrocious. Someone who's booked that trend, though, I would say was Clint Eastwood. Is Clint Eastwood? He's still alive. He's still in the 90s now. He's in his 90s. And it would be remiss of me to go any further without mentioning the sad loss of Sidney Poitier this week. He was born in Bermuda. He wasn't African American, so he wasn't the first African American to win the Best Picture Oscar, but he was the first black man to win the Best Actor Oscar, which he won for In the Heat of the Night, in which he played Mr. Tibbs. Famous for that line of "What do they call you up north?" after they come out with a bunch of horrible racist slurs, and he says they call me Mr. Tibbs. He delivers that line a lot better than what I do. Also notable for his role in Guess Who's Coming for Dinner, which is a phenomenal film. I think based on a stage play, maybe, but a powerhouse performance in that, along with Spencer Tracy and Catherine Hepburn. And also, he was the director of Stir Crazy with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, which was just one of my favourite movies growing up. It was the one where they go to jail and they have to get out, but they get out by, like, they're innocent and they get put in jail and they have to prove their innocence through a bucking bronco tournament or something crazy like that. It's like they have to go to the rodeo and win the rodeo and then they'll be like out of jail. It's a very long time ago that I saw that movie, but it was hilarious when I was a kid. Lots of swearing. So, Ooh, sounds interesting. I rarely watch movies, more of a book reader. Well, you know, I was chatting with my other half, Catherine, earlier today about how a lot of films let you down when you've read the book. And one of the things I loved about Hitchcock is, unless you've had spoiling things. And by the way, we're going to have a bit of a delve into Hitchcock's films. So if there's any that you don't want spoiling, I'm going to say the name of the film and then I'll talk about it. I'll probably mention some spoilers in the film, but I'm not going to haphazardly run from one film to the next. So you will be able to shut off the sound. And I'll tell you what, every time I go to a new film, I just wave like this so you'll know that I've gone to a new film if I remember to do that. But no spoilers here. But I was talking about Rebecca, which is 1940 Hitchcock film. It was the first film he made in Hollywood. It was his first Hollywood movie. Up till then, he'd been filming stuff in Britain, including the very first talkie film which ever came out, which was called Blackmail. That came out in 1929, and it was the very first British talkie film. It was the very first one that was filmed entirely. There were films before then where they had like a scene that had sound, but it was the first feature-length movie with sound, and that was Alfred Hitchcock. And then in 1940, he moved to America, or probably the year before he moved to America, but he released the movie Rebecca, based on the book by Daphne du Maurier. And it had Laurence Olivier in it, and it was absolutely brilliant. It was a brilliant adaptation. But interestingly, it was one of Hitchcock's least favourite films of his own. And I'll tell you why that was. Hitchcock loved to prep for a film. And we'll come into why, the stuff that he did. But basically, he liked to storyboard. He liked to work out every single shot, what every actor would do in every shot, what every character would do, what the camera would do, how the camera would move, where it would start, where it would end, all that kind of stuff. He'd work it all out before he started shooting the movie. And then when he started shooting the movie, to him, that was the most boring bit. And I think that with Rebecca, because it was his first Hollywood movie, he felt stymied by the studio, who said, you have to do it this way, you have to film it this way. And he was like, I don't want to do something a bit different. And they're like, no, you must do it this way. And he didn't have the power then to say no to the studios, something he got later on to varying degrees of success. But Rebecca, based on this book, it was a fantastic adaptation, and it won the Best Picture Oscar. Can you imagine that? A British director going to Hollywood, and the very first film they make in Hollywood wins the Best Picture Oscar. And this is during the golden age of cinema. The competition is pretty stiff. Not that it's not nowadays, but if something like Training Day wins Best Picture Oscar, or Chicago, it's like, really? Don't forget Oliver won Best Picture Oscar for 1968. So anyone's game, really. But I want to talk a little bit about Hitchcock's style. That's what I'd like to talk about. No, I don't want to go into too much about him as a person. He was a British film director. He had this famous phobia of eggs, and also the police. This is a weird story. When he was like 4, 5, 6 years old, his dad sent him to a police station with a note saying that he had been naughty. And he gave it to the police officer, and the police officer put him in a jail cell and said, this is what we do to naughty boys. And it was a very formative experience on the young Alfred. And from then on, he was scared of police officers, eggs, and also his own movies. This is something, maybe he just said it because he thought it was funny, but people asked him about, going to premieres and stuff. He said, no, I never watch my own films. They're too scary. So there you go. I think it was a joke. Graham, there'll be copyright problems with Gremlin 2. Yes. Hitchcock started in German cinema in UFA, not unusual at the time. Well, yeah, in the 1920s, German cinema and German expressionism with stuff like, kicked off with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in 1918 or something, 1919, and then with movies like Metropolis, and then building up to movies like M, which was 1933, I think. With that was Fritz Lang, I think, directed that, but it was Peter Lorre when he was a German actor before he fled the Nazis and became a Hollywood actor. He was in Casablanca, famously. Peter Lorre playing a paedophile in M, which is a film that is well worth checking out. Also, a film with just one letter. So if you ever played Hangman and you want to screw the person you're playing against, just do one little line and go, right, that's it. Let's go through every letter of the alphabet to try and get it right. Anyway, my understanding of Rebecca, Mrs. Danvers' Super-Cree, is that Hitchcock regarded the film as David O. Selznick, who did Wizard of Oz, more than his own. Yeah, I feel like he felt stymied making the movie. Adam says, love loads of this film. Rope, which was fun for being filmed in the style of one shot, very theatrical. We're given the impression of reels. At the time, I'm afraid your comment, Adam, runs off there. But what I'm assuming you're going to say is that the reels at the time only lasted about 8 minutes, so you had to put hidden cuts in, which they did in 1917. Sam Mendes' 1917, which is a fantastic movie, all done in one take. Well, it looks like it's all done in one take, and except for one interruption a bit of the way through. But in Rope, he had it the set up. And whenever he had to do a cut, he'll do a secret cut. So it would move from one room to the other, and he'll do a swipe cut, so you wouldn't notice there was a cut. So it looked like, as you were watching it, it was all just one continuous movie. And one of the skills that he developed in his career was this thing where he didn't like to edit from, say, a wide shot to a close-up shot. So what he would do instead is he would move the camera, whether that was a zoom or actually physically move it on a dolly towards what he wanted to have a close-up of, or away from it. And he did this to great effect in quite a few of his movies, especially, what was it? Was it Notorious? I think it was Notorious. There's a sequence in that about a key. And essentially, whenever you see the key, the camera either starts on a big wide shot, and then it narrows in on the key in someone's hand or on the dresser, and then downstairs when Claude Rains realizes that one of his keys is missing, it's a big wide shot, and then suddenly it zooms right in. A letter director would have just used a cut, would have just gone from the wide angle, locked off camera, and this is what Hitchcock did really, really well. He made the camera feel like, and he made you watching what the camera was filming, he made you feel like a participant in what was going on. He made, it was called, you were watching something subjectively rather than objectively. And it's really fascinating the way he did this. It's most done to brilliant effect in Rear Window, where everything you see in that movie is either in Jimmy Stewart's apartment or it's what he sees out the window. I think there's only one shot in the entire film that is actually out of the window, where it's somewhere else. All the rest of it, you see it through Jimmy Stewart's point of view. And what Hitchcock does, and he loves playing with his audience, he's probably one of the most playful directors of all time in Rear Window, is he makes you think, was there a murder? So in the story of Rear Window, I'm not going to spoil anything, I don't think, by telling you this, because it's at the very beginning. There's a guy, he's broken his leg, he can't get out of his apartment, he's in a wheelchair, and he's looking out the back window, and there's another apartment, all these different apartments across the way from him, across the courtyard or whatever, and he thinks he witnesses a murder. But you only see what he sees. You don't see any of the context. You don't hear the argument, the conversation, or anything like that. All you see is what he sees, and he thinks there's a murder that's been committed. And at the start, you think, yeah, that was a murder. And then a police chief, an inspector comes over and talks to him, and eventually he's like, oh, actually, I'm not sure. And that uncertainty is a big theme in Hitchcock's work, is that you never quite know what to expect. There are movies in which someone is suspected of being a bad guy, like Cary Grant in, I think, Suspicion. And then you've got... I think I'm getting my movies mixed up here, because there's Suspicion, There is Notorious, The Shadow of a Doubt. So yeah, in Suspicion, the protagonist in Suspicion, I think, is Cary Grant, and he's suspected of being a bad guy, but then in the end he turns out not to be a bad guy. And in Shadow of a Doubt, the bad guy is Joseph Cotton, who is suspected by his niece of being a bad guy, and it turns out no, he was actually a bad guy. I've heard numerous times that Hitchcock resented the Best Film Oscar for Rebecca, which went to Selznick as producer, not Hitchcock. Not sure how true that is. It might have been. He never won the Best Director Oscar. It's quite unbelievable. He was nominated 5 times. 5 times. Off the top of my head, I think it was for Rebecca, Lifeboat, maybe Dial M for Murder, certainly Vertigo and Psycho. And yeah, he never won. He won an Oscar in 1967, which was like a Special Achievement Award. And he turned up. And usually when he was being interviewed or when he was doing Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which is a TV show, he would talk at quiet length and stuff. I think he just turned up. He got the Oscar and went, "Thank you." Just like walked off. He was just like, yeah, don't care. But yeah, going back to also the way that he immersed the viewer into what was going on. He made the viewer into a character. There's scenes in some of his films where it is a POV scene, POV shot. And so if you think about Peep Show, Peep Show on Channel 4, the way you see everything through someone else's eyes, that was a technique that Hitchcock, if it didn't pioneer, he certainly used it in a lot of his films. The other thing he liked to do was the God's Eye view, which is where he'll get a camera, he put it in the ceiling. Sometimes it would just be straight down. He does this in Psycho, in a couple of shots at the top of the stairs. You're looking straight down, you got this God's Eye view of what's going on, or it might be an entire city, or it might be in The Birds, if you see The Birds, which is another Daphne du Maurier book, weirdly enough. I can't believe that Rebecca and The Birds are written by the same person, but yeah, they are. But in The Birds, there's a scene where a gas station blows up, a petrol station, and you see it from the view of the characters go, "Get away, run, it's gonna blow up," and then it blows up, and then you get a literal bird's eye view of the carnage. So you see the big explosion, you see the fire going up, and you see all the birds flying around in the foreground of the shot. A bird's eye view, God's eye view, which he was brilliant at. And where we talk about film grammar, how people put films together and how they make them look. Obviously, he had a bold visual style. He loved having a denouement in a big famous landmark. So in North by Northwest, it all comes to a head in Mount Rushmore and stuff. But other directors did that as well. You want to talk about sort of that bold visual style. You had David Lean at the time, who these epics and stuff. But what made, I think, Hitchcock's films more interesting in a way, I mean, I'm going to knock David Lean, and I will do a show on David Lean in the future, but what made them more interesting is the way that he pulled you in, and he made you, whether you wanted to be or not, a voyeur. He did this in a load of films, most notably, obviously Psycho, where Norman Bates is looking through the little hole at Marion Crane in the bathroom, but also in Rear Window, which is basically a film about voyeurism. And there's a scene where there's a guy playing the piano, and there's Hitchcock plays himself, because he made a cameo in all of his movies pretty much. And Hitchcock turns to the camera and just looks directly at the camera, as if to say, like, what are you looking at? So you're kind of feeling a little bit morally kind of, is this right that I like this character, this James Stewart character, when he's sort of spying on people? But you're spying on people because you're seeing the movie through the eyes of Jimmy Stewart. It's just like, yeah. And that moral ambiguity is something that you see time and time again in Hitchcock films. Not just for the characters, so you don't know whether they're bad or good. There's a lot of movies that he made where he would have, like, The Wrong Man. He actually made a movie called The Wrong Man, but also The 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much, North by Northwest. They feature a protagonist who was in the wrong place at the wrong time and is being chased after by the baddies, but actually haven't done anything wrong themselves. But yeah, when it comes to sort of voyeurism, Alfred Hitchcock famously said, I like playing the audience like a piano. Which is really fun when you think of something like the scene where in Psycho. So spoilers coming for Psycho. If you haven't seen that 62-year-old movie, then please just turn off the sound for a little bit. I'll wave when I'm finished. So obviously Marion Crane gets killed, which is shocking. I don't think that ever happened in a movie before, of a main character who you're following for the first 45 minutes of the video of the film. She gets dispatched. And then you follow another character, and then he gets killed, and then you follow a couple of other characters and Norman. But that bit, he kills Marion. And there's so many things in movie lore where people talk about the whole shower scene and the fact that Hitchcock went to the censors and went, this is the scene. They went, oh, that's far too graphic. You can see nipples, you can see a buttock. And he said, okay, I'll go away and cut it. I'll recut it. And he took it away. He didn't change anything, just resubmitted it. And went, I've taken some things out. And they went, oh yeah, it's all right now. And he was like, it's exactly the same scene. But immediately after killing Marion, his mom kills Marion. Norman cleans up the murder scene, including this is the first time that a toilet had ever been seen in the cinema. I think that's really funny because there was a thing in the 1930s called the Hays Code, and it was Hitchcock and a bunch of other directors who really started pushing against that in the 1960s. And really, since Psycho came out in 1960, you've got to give Hitchcock the credit for basically pushing back against these stupid rules. There were rules like, if there is a man and woman in a room and they're not married, or maybe if they were married, I don't know, the man had to keep 1 foot on the ground at all time. Like he was fucking playing snooker. So that was a thing. But he kills Marion, and then he puts her in the boot of the car, the trunk of the car, and pushes the car into the swamp. And there's a moment as it's going into the swamp where it stops. And at this time, you don't really know Norman that much. You've only had really one scene with him and Marion having a talk, and he talks about his mother and how controlling she is, and how he would like to get away from her. And then Marion says, "Well, why didn't you put him in a home?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to put him in a home." But there's this moment. It's going into the swamp, and it stops. And you, as the viewer watching this, think, "Keep going, keep going, keep going," and then you're like, oh my God, I'm siding with a murderer. I'm siding with someone trying to cover up a murder. At least at that point, you think his mum did it. So you're like, what? Why am I defending this guy? And Hitchcock loved shit like that. He liked to play with his audience. He liked to play with perceptions, expectations, emotions, your morality. He was brought up a strict Catholic. I told you the story about his dad sending him to jail for the night. Oh my God. Could you imagine sending your 5-year-old child to a police station to be locked up? Oh my God. But yeah, that kind of informed a lot of his filmmaking. Obviously, he was a lapsed Catholic. But in Psycho, you think about the 7 deadly sins, stuff like that. It starts off and he's, the beginning of the movie is Marion Crane not only having an affair with a married man, she steals loads of money and runs away, and it's like, oh, okay, she's a baddie, but what Hitchcock does is he makes her sympathetic. You understand that the guy that she's sleeping with is married, but he's separated from his wife, he's divorced from his wife, his ex-wife, whatever, and he's having to pay lots of money in alimony. You understand that her boss, who she steals off, the 40 grand that she steals, is a bit of a dick, and he's a bit of a lech, and you're kind of like, oh, well, he's not, he brags about how much money he's got, and like, for him, 40 grand is nothing, but for her, it can be a whole new life. And I like that. And I like it when you have a movie where you have characters who could be good, could be bad, do some good things, could do some bad things. That's more like reality. I'm not going to mention Cobra Kai because I think I'll lose my audience here, but I think Cobra Kai, the TV show, which is a sequel to The Karate Kid, does this very well, where you have a character who's a good character and then they do something and you think, oh, that's not what you're supposed to do as a good character. And then you have a bad character and they do something good and you're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this person. And by the end of it, you kind of like, I've got sympathy for this bad guy and I think that good guy is a jerk and oh, I'm confused. And Hitchcock used that same sort of idea of fleshing out his characters years before Cobra Kai, obviously. But yeah, he really made some incredible movies, some which I'd like to point out. What are people saying? I wish this woman in Psycho bathroom scene was Priti Patel. If Saints had tasted the toilet, ... It wasn't just the first toilet in a film, it was the first toilet being flushed in the film, which I thought was hilarious. One random aside, what do you think about Bates Motel? I never watched it. Sorry, I know I should have done. I will at some point. There's just so many things to watch. I only just discovered last night that they had made another season of What We Do in the Shadows. So me and Catherine sat there and just binge watched the first 3 episodes of season 3 last night. There just ain't enough hours in the day, I swear. I Confess is a very Catholic film, murder confession, but the context of the Catholic confession to it by the killer and the escalating dilemma it poses on the priest who hears it. Yeah, indeed. And that is another great, part of the Hitchcock canon. Is that the right word? I think so. He loved doing this thing, and he was interviewed for the American Film Institute in 1970, and there's a clip of it on YouTube if you want to look for it. It's only short. And he talks about the building of suspense. And he says, a group of people sitting around a table, a group of men sitting around a table, and they're talking about a baseball game. That's really boring for 5 minutes. That's really boring. That's not great cinema. You put a bomb under the table and let the audience know there's a bomb under the table, and it's going to go off in 5 minutes. Suddenly, every word of that conversation becomes something that you should pay attention to. You have to pay attention to it. Are they going to find the bomb? Are they going to see it in time? Are they going to rescue themselves? Are they going to throw out the window and it's going to blow up? Or is it going to blow up in the room? You don't know. You're the audience. You're watching it and you're getting more and more and more tense watching it. He said, if you let a bomb go off, then that's just the moment gone. You've got 5 seconds of, a shock. That was shocking. Oh, okay. But if you have that 5 minutes of tension building up to the bomb going off, then you've got people engaged. He also spoke about not confusing his viewers, and something famously said about, like, people say, well, why in all your films is there always Cary Grant or Jimmy Stewart? Why don't you use any other actors? And he said, well, when I make a film with Cary Grant, you know Cary Grant. I mean, to make a film with Jimmy Stewart, you know who Jimmy Stewart is. And I don't have to waste scenes explaining their character to you, which I thought was quite clever. But then you have movies like Vertigo, where Jimmy Stewart plays against type. Yeah, kind of, because he's actually... he's suffering from mental health problems, let's face it. Vertigo is a film about mental health problems, about obsession, about vertigo and acrophobia, which is the fear of heights. Vertigo is not the fear of heights, it's just the dizziness that you get because of reasons. When does the film start? At 9 o'clock. We're going to start watching at 9 o'clock. We're going to head over there. Glasgow Kiss is going to give us the code that we need. He's going to drop that into the chat about 5 minutes beforehand. And then we're going to head over to the Discord server and watch it together if you want. What I'm going to do probably is see how it goes with people being able to chat. But if people are chatting too much and it's spoiling the fun of the movie, then we might just head over to the text chat and we can text to each other while we're watching the movie. We're watching Spellbound, which is a fantastic movie and one of the best posters of Hitchcock's career, as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely fantastic poster, which some of my very early viewers, when I started doing the whole 1 hour long talks about politics in 2020. Oh my God, that seems so long ago now. I actually had some film posters behind me, and someone got that it was a poster of Spellbound. So yeah, we're watching Spellbound. Yeah, that's what we're watching. Great explanation of suspense, but I think I heard that years ago in the context of Sabotage, which Hitchcock saw as a mistake, but which I really like. Sabotage was the movie he made in 1940, I want to say 3. Sabotage was a war movie made during the war to get people to hate the Nazis, essentially. So again, Hitchcock was he wasn't given the artistic freedom that he probably would have liked in Sabotage. But yeah, it was a war movie, very very of its time. Maybe almost as on the nose as I think it's called the 49th Parallel. I might be getting the name wrong there. Or the 42nd Parallel. Someone sort me out there. But that was another war movie that was not by Hitchcock, but it was was that by Powell and Pressburger? Quick, Charlie, let me know. But yeah, the 42nd Parallel. I'm getting it mixed up with the 39 Steps. All these movies with numbers in, Jesus, is about a couple of Nazis or gang of Nazis who escape to Canada, and they're trying. The ship has blown up, or the submarine or whatever, and they end up in Canada, and they're trying to get across the border into the USA, where at that point the USA wasn't part of the war, so it was very much a war propaganda film, like Sabotage. Actually, I'm lying, because it wasn't Sabotage; it was Saboteur. So we must have done a film called Sabotage and a film called Saboteur. And didn't he make the 39 Steps twice? I don't know. Anyway, that stuffed bird in Psycho. Birds are shown early over the flat and rear window. He had a bit of an obsession with birds. And obviously, Marion Crane, name of a bird. Birds are a feature of Hitchcock films, often are around when things are not right, unsettling. Yeah. Hitchcock was very good at leaving things up to the imagination. And famous for, this is FSM is the dog, famous for appearing in a cameo in most films. Yeah, nearly all of his films he will appear at some point, which is a fun little game to play. 52 films, though. That would be quite fun to watch a Hitchcock film every week for a year, the year of Hitchcock. But I think I couldn't do a show about Hitchcock every day for a year. Yes, 49th Parallel, Powell and Pressburger. Thank you very much, Charlie. I thought it was. 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. I've never been great with numbers. Sabotage had a scene. Okay, so Sabotage was before. The bomb goes off tragically, which horrified audiences at the time, and later Hitchcock said that it was a mistake to let the bomb go off. Is that the one on the bus? There's a kid on the bus, isn't there? And the bomb's under the seat, and he let it go off. He then did a film called Saboteur a few years later in America, in Florida, in Hollywood, and that was a war propaganda film. 49 Parallel, I think it was also called Hudson Bay. Could be wrong, maybe. Too many films are still in copyright. Well, no, not necessarily. A lot of the older films are out of copyright, and there's a lot of films on YouTube that we can watch on YouTube, together. There's no one stopping us doing that, and they're available for free. So, hopefully we won't get sued. I was just about to suggest you might well have mixed up Sabotage and Saboteur. Sabotage is well worth a watch if you haven't seen it. I recommend The One That Got Away, 1957, starring Hardy Kruger. Adrian Wilson just says yes. Yes. So let's just talk about a few of his films. Oh my God, we're up to a quarter to, it's 8:45 already. Bloody hell. So, we've got all the way from sort of one of the earliest films of his films that I've seen is probably Blackmail from 1929. The last one that I've seen, I can't remember whether Marnie was the last one. There was one he called Topaz, which I don't think I've seen, or if I have seen, I kind of forgotten. The one I can remember is Frenzy, which was 1972, which featured the Necktie Killer. I think he liked his names for like the killers, the Necktie Killer, which I watching it back now after the Me Too movement and everything, the way that they treat this man who goes around strangling women to death after having sex with them. They kind of treat it. It's all set in London. It's kind of like treated as a bit of titillation, whereas it's like, oh my God, this guy's a serious sex offender. What the hell? But yeah, something that I didn't realize until this week when we watched Highlander. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I haven't seen it since I was a kid, and I thought, we'll watch Highlander because Catherine had never seen it before, and I was like, it's like this schlocky 1980s, terribly acted fantasy film, and it's actually the guy out of Police Squad, not Naked Gun, but the TV series that became Naked Gun, the films, and it's Frank Drebin's assistant whatever his name is. You know, the guy who like holds the coffee mug at the end, pouring it out, and it's like coffee's going everywhere. It's him playing the police chief in Highlander, and he plays exactly the same character. He's completely useless, and his name is Frank, and I'm like, oh my god. Anyway, did they not see this? Love the ending of Frenzy, the improvised coffin just dropping to the floor. I tell you what, I think it was Frenzy, it might have been Marnie. There's an opening shot, and it's a helicopter shot going into a building. Oh my god, and the helicopter's like the shots like this going in. It looks bloody awful. I'm sitting there going, can you put some kind of like warp stabilizer on that shot, please? It's all over the shot. I've seen the Lodger and Torn Curtain. I think Torn Curtain was that was a spy one, wasn't it? That was set. Well, it was set during the Cold War. It was made during the Cold War. But other great movies that I really recommend that Hitchcock made. There's the 39 Steps, which is also based on a book, which again is wrong man in the wrong place at the wrong time. A guy gets embroiled in this sort of international spy ring. The Lady Vanishes, which is a fantastic, one of his last British films that he made, which is fantastic. It's all set on a train, obviously. No, actually, that's not obvious from the name. It's set on a train, and it's delayed by an avalanche, and this old lady disappears, and it's just it's a great little mystery, and that's something that Hitchcock loved to do. He always liked to leave his audiences guessing, always trying to work things out for themselves as they're watching the movie. And like I said, he never made his movies too complex, but at the same time, they were quite kind of complex ideas. If you think about Vertigo, okay, spoilers for Vertigo. I keep forgetting to wave to say the spoilers are over, but spoilers for Vertigo. It's all an elaborate murder scheme, and it's very ridiculously elaborate. Like, why would you go through that much trouble? You were rich. You could have just gone out on your yacht for a cruise with no one else except you and your wife, who you didn't like, and you could just push her overboard and say she fell overboard and died. That's how you get rid of people in real life. Agatha Christie was famously asked how to do the perfect murder. There's a woman who wrote dozens and dozens of books, Miss Marple and Hercules Poirot, explaining, all these different, convoluted ways of killing someone. And she said, the best way to kill someone is just really simple. You don't want to have a big plan. You don't want to have, because there's so many things to go wrong. There's so many witnesses. There's so many, variables. What you want to do is, I go for a walk every day along the cliffside with my husband. One day, if I felt like it, I'll just push him off. Just push him off the cliff. No one around. So he fell off. Who's going to argue with you? So yeah, top tips to potential murderers out there. Only joking. Rebecca, obviously 1940, as I said, his first film that he made in Hollywood. A fantastic adaptation with Laurence Olivier, and the I don't know. It was. I like it. I think it's a great film. There was a newer adaptation that I think was on Netflix or something a couple of years ago, and it was all the BBC, and it was just, it wasn't as good. Wasn't as good. The Lady Vanishes is very clever. The characters are, at least for the first 2/3, mostly too self-interested to react quickly to the peril happening all around them. Indeed it is. Sometimes seen as an allegory of appeasement in the 1930s. I just got a message. I got to check it. This is Glasgow Kiss sort of sending me messages to say, Graham, you need to do something. Yes, he is. It's open to all. It's open to all. So anyone who wants to watch this movie tonight can watch it. And we're gonna chat while we're watching it. Obviously, we've only got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to quickly rattle through some of the other movies that I really recommend of Hitchcock that you haven't already seen. The Birds, which I mentioned already. Again, another book by Daphne du Maurier. It's the whole thing's just suspense. It's just suspense all the way through. What the story is ridiculously simple. The birds go nuts and start attacking people, but then they stop going nuts and just sit there. And then after an unquantifiable time, they attack people again. And it's just so eerie and creepy and weird. And I know the special effects aren't that good these days, but a great movie. There's Lifeboat, 1944. Oh, he was nominated for Best Picture for Best Director for Lifeboat, which was based on a novella by John Steinbeck, who wrote Grapes of Wrath. He also wrote Travels with Charlie, which I really recommend as a travel book. Not that I read many travel books, but he wrote a book. John Steinbeck wrote a book called Travels with Charlie. Charlie not being cocaine. It was actually the name of his pink poodle that he travelled around the US with. Rope, which was already mentioned, which is looks like it's all done in one take. There's no obvious edits in it, which is revolutionary at the time. Also shot in real time. He had a sun going down in the background outside the apartment that it's all set in, and it's a really good movie. It's a really I like it. It's got Jimmy Stewart in as well. Shadow of a Doubt, which I mentioned about Joseph Cotton in that, where he is suspected of being a murderer by his niece. Turns out he's not. Because the evidence isn't there or something, but his niece continues to believe that he is actually the killer, the merry widow killer. Strangers on a Train, 1951. That's an adaptation again of Patricia Highsmith's thriller. Fantastic book and fantastic film about two people who meet on a train and decide to swap murders. Because one thing you need for a murder is motive. So if you've got no motive, you won't get caught for a murder. And one's like a tennis pro or something, I can't remember. And it basically, one of them commits the murder and the other one doesn't. And then it just all spirals out from there. It's really, really good. Loved Rear Window, says Margaret McNamee. Yeah, Rear Window, absolutely fantastic. Sometimes seen as an allegory of appeasement in the 1930s, indeed. Glasgow Kiss has given us the link there. You can see the Discord link. If you follow that link, we'll be starting the movie in about 5 minutes time. But Glasgow, you got to give me a minute to get ready to watch the movie. Actually, you could just start it. I'll just join in. Because it's an old movie, I guarantee there'll be loads of credits at the beginning of the movie, which used to be the rule. You used to have credits at the beginning of a movie, or you'll get thrown out the Directors Guild of America. Which is what happened to George Lucas when he made Star Wars in 1977, and he didn't want to have titles at the beginning of it. And as a result, basically, he got thrown out of the Directors Guild of America. Now, most movies don't have titles at the beginning, although a lot of movies seem to have title sequences after the movie now, which is kind of weird, but also kind of good because it doesn't give away what happens in the movie while you're watching it. Anyway, so moving swiftly on, we've got Dial M for Murder. That's the tennis guy. Who wants to murder his wealthy wife, Grace Kelly, soon to be Princess Grace of Monaco after this. But basically, he blackmails an old acquaintance to carry out the murder, and it all goes to pot when Grace Kelly doesn't actually die. So North by Northwest is another great film, a classic suspense film. It's got this absolutely ridiculous scene. It's really famous. Cary Grant, his real name is Archibald Leach, running through a cornfield, being chased by a biplane, which is the most shittest way you could possibly try and assassinate someone. I just can't imagine. That's just a daft way to assassinate someone. Like a biplane. Do you know what I mean? It's like but really famous scene. Fantastic. Like it's one of those movies where it's kind of like Duel or like Night of the Hunter or something, where you have this whole thing, it never lets up. It's always like he's being chased, being hunted, he's being chased down, and every scene in it is very, very tense because you don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. Rear Window, which we've talked about a lot, that's 1954. James Stewart trapped in his apartment. Just a great film, and the way that Hitchcock makes you see the world through Jeffries, the character played by James Stewart's eyes, it's just brilliant. You get glimpses into these other apartments, but only through his eyes. It's not till the end of the movie that you realise that torso girl or torso woman is actually a ballerina and stuff like that. And she really loves her husband, and she only has these men round to her flat all the time because she's trying to get dancing jobs. And he's watching this woman and thinking, oh my god, what a floozy! She has all these men around, but actually that's not the case. And misleading the audience is something that Hitchcock absolutely loved to do. Vertigo, I could do a whole show about Vertigo. Vertigo's probably, for my money, equal first best movie of Hitchcock's, along with Psycho. And that's Jimmy Stewart again. It's a story about obsession, like Psycho, like Rebecca. Another theme that comes again and again in Hitchcock's work, but also relationships and what we do in relationships, because what happens is Jimmy Stewart falls in love with this fictional woman who doesn't exist, Madeline. He falls in love with her, but she's not real. She's actually a woman called Judy who's pretending to be someone that she's not in order for this elaborate murder plot to happen. And he falls in love with this romanticized ideal of this woman. And then when he finds the real version of her, when he finds Judy, it doesn't work because he's expecting her to be something that she's not, and she's expecting him to be something that he's not, and it's very clever and it's very tense. And I've got to say that the actual murder plot is a bit silly. It's a bit silly, but great movie, and it deals with that theme of obsession, but also it's got a downer ending. This is a big Hollywood movie, 1958, and it's got a downer ending. He just went, yeah, I've got to. That's the end. Live with it. Live with this raging sense of injustice, you lot. Which I thought was really, really cool. Grace Kelly, the iconic Hitchcock blonde. Yeah. One of the things that I really liked about Hitchcock is we've run out of time now. We've got 1 minute left. But strong female characters. They're never really a damsel in distress. You think about Marion Crane. She's not a damsel in distress. She's a woman who takes control of her own destiny in Psycho. You think of Judy or Madeline in Vertigo. She's put in an impossible position. She's forced to do something that she doesn't want to do. And she fights back against it in the same way that Grace Kelly in Dial M for Murder fights back. And so Hitchcock, you at first glance, especially watching something like Frenzy, you'd think, sexist, old school director, But he did give a lot of very juicy roles to women in a way that we didn't really see that much in the 80s. Once Hitchcock was dead, and we were getting a lot of action movies where women were just collateral damage. They really were. You'd get a few odd movies like Star Wars where you had the princess rescuing herself, but a lot of the movies of the 80s are deeply, deeply sexist in that respect. And there was a few movies where there are literally no women who have a line, like Shawshank Redemption. Great movie, but I don't think there's a single scene that has a woman in it. Yeah. Anyway, so obviously Psycho, one of the best movies ever, and of all time, completely changed cinema. And it was something that Hitchcock found very difficult to get off the ground because no studio wanted to touch it with a barge pole. And he made it pretty much self-funded. That's why it was in black and white, because he couldn't afford the colour film. And he did these mad stuff. Like, he bought every copy of Psycho in California so people couldn't read up, or in America or something. He bought every copy of the particular print run of the book, so people couldn't read what happened. He made it very clear that no one was to see the film after it started. Not even the Queen or the President of the United States of America. Not even the Queen. God bless her, he wrote. But also, he went to great lengths to keep the secret a secret. He wouldn't let Anthony Perkins, who played Norman, he wouldn't let Janet Leigh, who played Marion Crane, he wouldn't let them do interviews before the movie came out, in case they gave anything away. So there were no press interviews before the movie came out. And everyone was just sworn to secrecy. And this was a big thing of you have to watch the movie. Very clever bit of marketing because of that idea of the fear of missing out. And he was a great marketeer as well. One of my favourite other directors from this sort of era is James Whale, who always used to do this kind of was it James Whale? And he loved doing mad things to get people to come and see his films. And Hitchcock was a bit like that. He understood the show business of not just making a movie and going, oh, there's a movie, leaving it to other people to sort of deal with after that point. He liked to get involved and make the watching his movies an experience rather than just a passive thing that you do. You become an active participant in the crimes, the goings on, the moral duplicity, everything else, which is just fantastic. So we're going to come to Spellbound now. It's just a little after 9, so we'll be heading over to the Discord server after this. Thank you very much for joining me. Spellbound is based on a book by Francis Beading, I think his name is, and it features Gregory Peck and Ingrid Bergman. And she's a psychoanalyst in it, and he's a man with amnesia. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to give anything away. It's a great old movie, and a lot of the familiar Hitchcock tropes that we see time and time again in his work before then and after then appear in this movie, and it's one of my favorites. So yes, thank you very much for watching, talking about Hitchcock for an hour. Thank you very much for your comments coming in. Adrian Wilson saying Strange on Chain and Dial M for Murder both feature tennis players in the key role. Oh, thank you. So I wasn't getting confused because I was like, I'm sure it was a tennis player on the... In the future, when I've got more time and a staff and an editor and someone to do the lights and someone to fix my green screen, so I don't have a blob of green here, I will have an auto cue and actually script this stuff. But until then, you're just gonna have to put up with winging it and going, I think this is the case, but I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so let's head over to watch Spellbound on Film Club. On the Discord server. It's the Rejoin EU Discord server at the moment. We're going to change the name, aren't we, Glasgow? We're going to change it to just Graham Hughes' Discord server. And you're all invited for now. In the future, we're probably going to just make this patrons only. So if you're not a patron, please head over to patreon.com/thatgingerscouser. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, please just simply become a YouTube member. It's only £3 a month. And with that, you get access to Film Club and also other perks of being a actual subscriber to my channel. Oh, sorry, more than a subscriber to my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Give us a like on the way out. And I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Well, if I don't see you watching the movie, but I'll see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock for Hughes at 10, when we'll be dissecting the week's news and current affairs from Britain and around the world. Until then, chin chin, thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. All the best.